ETNA Interactive, Ryan Miller. Come on up.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. So, this is a little weird. Like, I talk a lot for work, but I normally know my audience a lot better. And looking around the room, I think there's a lot of you that I know. I think we've got a lot of people here who maybe are thinking about starting a business. I see a couple of you that I know have already started a business. And for those that are in the thinking about starting, I'm probably gonna have to apologize to a bunch of you because I want to maybe talk to a smaller segment of the entire audience tonight. You know, I think I want to talk to the people in the room who don't want to be first, maybe don't have an original idea, may not end up being the best at whatever the business is that you start, and still, despite all of those things, you wake up in the morning and you go, man, I've got to do it. You know, I've got to do this thing. So, you know, I get it. I get why I think for so many of you it is that you think I've got to be the guy who changes the world, because the MBA programs, the big magazines, they sensationalize the innovators. They sensationalize the people who have the small ideas that make it rich. We talk all the time about the disruptors, and I get it because that's sexy and it's fun. But at the end of the day, when we step back and we look at it 10 minutes from now, the question I'm going to have for you is it okay to maybe be derivative, to be second in line, and still do something kind of amazing for yourself and for the people that you end up serving? So a little bit about my backstory. My first real like spotting of entrepreneurialism was shortly after I graduated. I went to work for this company that was an internet service provider, and they were based here in SLO. And I think that there's probably some people in the room who are young enough that you don't actually recognize a modem. So, like, just in case, let's see if this, you may have been like crawling on the floor, and you heard like, do you remember this? This is like nostalgia, right? So there was a time where you had to hook up what was effectively a phone to your personal computer in your home. And the part of the story that's actually kind of important to recognize is the internet service provider that you had an account with, they had to have a piece of hardware that was pretty much the same without the fancy plastic case on the other side to answer your call. It was a really expensive business to be in. And in a market like San Luis Obispo, we got the crap hardware, right? And so some of you will remember that back in the day, like the AOLs, the Earthlinks, they took all of the old hardware that they couldn't get away with using in San Francisco or LA anymore, the 28.8 and the 14.4 modems, and they put them here.
Thanks, guys.
That's how it worked, right? So there's this guy named Mark Wright, and totally makes sense. He wanted the faster modem for himself, right? I was like, I want the 56K access. And frankly, a lot of people did, but nobody did anything about it. But what Mark did is he basically realized that the feeling he had was that just wasn't fair. It wasn't gonna work for him. And so where a lot of people grumbled, what Mark did is he started the business that would ultimately become a company called The Grid, one of the largest regional internet service providers on the West Coast, and it started right here in San Luis Obispo. So great success story. It was awesome. I was very, very fortunate to be recruited by him and end up being one of the owners of the company. And you know, at the end of the day, it was little towns like this, San Luis Obispo. I don't know if anybody actually knows where Susanville is. That were what our story was all about. You know, Mark had this personal passion. He's like, this sucks. It doesn't make sense that just because I choose to live in paradise, you can't set a little bank of fast modems up to get me connected to the internet. He had a cause. You know, and he basically said, screw this. I realize that financially it doesn't make the most sense. We're going to bring high-speed internet to small towns all across California, Arizona, and Nevada. You know, and what Mark found with his cause, you know, he wasn't the guy who invented the modem. In most of the markets that we went into, we weren't the first with the fast access. But because he had that really clear message about his cause, we attracted followers. You know, in markets like in Susanville, Cal, does anybody know where this is, honestly? No. So go to Lake Tahoe, get in a car, drive north for a couple of hours right along the edge of the border. It's a town of about 17,000 people. We were getting letters as we were growing that business from towns all over the West Coast pleading with us to be the next town where we expanded into. When we opened our bank of modems in Susanville, the town actually threw us a parade. Right? And that's what happens when you have inside of you a purpose that resonates with the people. Right? They're going to come out and they're going to celebrate however small your ambition is. They're going to come out and they're going to celebrate you. Right? And so when we look at something like this and we think about what's going on, it's like, wow, this is actually a pretty amazing thing that happens when you combine that small personal passion with the potential of a market. So let's fast forward just a little bit. A year and a half later, we're looking at it. It was, again, if you were to ask Mark, you know, what was the ambition? He's like, man, I just wanted fast modem for myself. And it kind of made sense that we'd get a little bit bigger. In 1999, we had an opportunity to sell that company. It was an exciting time, an exciting transaction. But for me, it meant going back to work. Right? Time moves on. You know, Mark had in him that passion to fix this thing, this little problem that he found. And it was exciting for me to get behind his cause. You know, go back to work though, and you kind of find, man, that cause is missing. I went to work for 2 or 3 companies between then. And it wasn't until a couple years later, about 2001, that I actually found a cause of my own. So let's go back to another piece of nostalgia. So it's just a couple years later, it's 2001. I've been working with an agency. I got recruited by a company in Santa Barbara that had 30 surgery centers. And for those of you that have a memory of the internet that goes back to that time, Google was kind of just starting out. The search engine scene was like Alta Vista and Lycos and Hotbot and InfoSeek and Ask Jeeves. It's totally fragmented. The browser space was crazy. For any of you that work in the digital space right now and you complain about having cross-browser compliance, you know, back in the day, you built a site and it never worked on more than one browser. Right? And so you spent hours and hours and hours trying to make it work for, you know, maybe 60 to 70% of the population. And that doesn't sound like such a big deal unless you own a business. And at that time, I was working for this outfit and I was pretty much responsible for everything with a plug. Like I had to figure out, install practice management software and get the network working so that we can share accounting data across 30 locations. But my passion, my purpose I found in working with the digital agencies. Because back then, most of the digital agencies had spun out of print houses and they treated everything like print. And we needed websites that people could find that actually were going to attract patients for our practices. And it was killing me to try to find an agency that could serve our purpose. Right? And on one hand, what we saw is they were burning their people. Right? Their margins were all about people working 12 to 16-hour days. And so what we saw is that the contact that we had, the person we worked with, would burn out overnight. We'd get a couple weeks to a couple months and they were gone. The projects were always pretty much missing deadline and the turnaround was sloppy. We'd start talking about SEO and nobody got it because it was just something that people were starting to understand. It was like an industry that was developing and those designers weren't gonna solve that problem for us. And you know, if we go back and we look at this time with everything that was going on and I try to qualify, like what was I feeling, what was going through my head, because I didn't want to start a company. And I think, Asia, you talked about this a little bit, like I didn't set out to build the company that I have today, but the problem with causes is they don't really work that way. Like you don't get to choose, it just, you feel it and you've got to do it. You know, and if I try to describe it, like what did I feel just before I did it? It was a lot like this. Like I was pissed. I had a job to do. I wanted an agency. I wanted a partner that would get what was going on with me, that would take responsibility for understanding their own damn industry and work with me to do what we needed to do. And I couldn't find it. And I basically said, you know what, screw it, I gotta make it. And I didn't really feel like I had a choice. It's something that I think it was a strong enough. I think there's at least a couple of you in the room who get it. Who know, I got this thing I want to do. I know I can do it. I know it's worthwhile, even if it's not the biggest thing in the world. So full disclosure, I kind of feel that way about a lot of crap. So a funny story here, and there's at least one person in the room I know who's heard this before, because I think she might have been there for it. For a little while, our offices were located on Broad Street. Anybody know where Village Host Pizza is? Okay, so they have a salad bar there. Oh, I can just feel how angry and upset I was back then. And they put this, okay, you could like immediately right away, you're going to see the problem. They put the lettuce in the middle. They put the toppings like a rainbow around the out-hand side. And then there was some salad dressing here and here. And then there were bowls on one side, and there were like the dry toppings over on it. And trying to get a salad at lunch, they were like right next door to our office. Trying to get a salad at lunch was a little bit like, sort of like playing Twister with strangers while balancing a salad bowl on your head. It was like fighting. And I actually sat down on like my third visit to the restaurant. I'm like, oh, I can't handle this anymore. Grabbed a napkin and drew a flow out for the salad bar. I was like, can I please meet with your manager for a moment? So I feel this way about a lot of things. So the reason why I bring that up is not to reveal what a psycho I am, but just to point out that, you know, on paper, what I was about to do did not make a whole lot more sense than me telling my family, hey, I want to start a salad bar flow consultancy for small town pizza parlors. Because back then, you know, back in the day, this was 13 years ago, there were already a lot of agencies who were trying to sell into the market I wanted to go into. And our clients, the doctors, didn't want to buy it. They resented having to invest a dime in online marketing. They didn't want to be there. So it didn't make a lot of sense. And the reason why I bring that up is if your purpose is strong enough, if you know what you want to do, it may not necessarily look to the rest of the world like it's a sensible business idea. And yet today, if we step back and look what we've been able to accomplish, I have the fantastic opportunity to work with 60 amazing people here in San Luis Obispo. They're really special folks, and I could not have told you 13 years ago that this is ultimately what we were going to be able to create. I think I would guess a lot of you know a lot of these people, and you know how exceptional they are. You know, so here we are 13 years later, $8 million company. We've got fantastic people working for us, and it's a pretty special thing that, you know, that silly little bit of, well, the best word I could describe at the time was just a feeling of indignation, a feeling I had to do something about this to make it better for myself and for the clients I serve. So it wouldn't be a presentation about the internet without a cat photo in it, so I had to do that for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing about starting a business. It is a fantastic platform to lay bare all of your inadequacies. Because you're going to start a business, and you're going to find out really fast that you are very poorly equipped to handle 90% of your day. I don't care if you went through an MBA program. What you're going to find is that your training probably won't prepare you for, you know, the first time that an employee comes into your office and says, you know, I have a problem with the hygiene of one of my coworkers, and I really don't know how to address it. You're going to have challenges the first time, maybe, unless you studied finance, when you realize, man, I've really got to dive in and deal with my business's finances. And it is incredibly humbling to realize that you started with this little bit of personal passion. You probably had some specific isolated skill set, and yet you are going to be called on to make hiring decisions, to spot the perfect customer, to make really difficult calls every single day of the rest of your life. And the thing that you have, even though you don't have that preparation, you aren't going to have the majority of the skills that you need. If you walk into the room every day with a really clear sense of what that purpose was in the beginning, I promise you, almost all of those decisions will make themselves for you.